The air in the golden wood held a palpable tension, heavy with the scent of pine sap and impending destiny. Elin stood near the clearing's edge, the damp moss cool beneath the thin soles of her slippers. She was a silhouette of nervous hope, her fair skin glowing faintly in the silver moonlight filtering down through the ancient canopy. Her long, flowing blonde hair, styled with an intricate braid near the crown, cascaded over the shoulders of her cream-colored silky dress. The fabric shimmered, reflecting the soft, diffused light that created a sense of mystical tranquility. Tonight was the midnight rite, the night the Alpha King would claim his mate, fulfilling a prophecy woven into the very roots of their existence. Elin had been chosen as one of the few eligible women brought before the throne of the moon. She tried to steady her breathing, listening to the soft rustling of ferns as the sacred animals moved unseen through the lush greenery. This was not merely a romantic hope. It was the foundation of the territory's survival. The Alpha King, Kar, was renowned for his strength and his solitude. He was a force of nature, and his mate was meant to complete him. The hour hand crept toward 12. The king never chose in man form. The bond was too primal, too sacred to be marked by human hesitation. It had to be the wolf, the magnificent, untamed creature of legend. A sudden hush fell over the forest. Even the night sounds, the chirping of crickets, the distant hoot of an owl ceased their chorus. Elin's heart hammered a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She felt the shift in the air pressure, the instantaneous drop in temperature that preceded his presence. From the deepest shadows of the woodland he emerged. He was magnificent. Kar, the Alpha King, stood before them in his true form. His fur was thick, a startling pure white that seemed to drink the moonlight. His posture radiated lethal power, yet his movements were liquid grace. Elin lifted her gaze, meeting his eyes, a striking, burning amber that fixed directly upon her, alert and assessing. He did not walk. He flowed across the clearing, his massive paws barely disturbing the mossy ground. He ignored the other women, his powerful focus locked solely on Elin. A surge of exhilarating warmth spread through her chest, the undeniable pull of a destined bond. This was it. Kar stopped inches away, his great head level with her chest. His scent, snow, ozone, and powerful dominion flooded her senses, making her dizzy. She instinctively raised a slender hand, wanting to touch the soft fur beneath his jaw, to offer the submission and welcome that the ritual demanded. Elin closed her eyes, ready for the brush of his snout, the possessive claim of his teeth on her shoulder, the ancient recognition that would seal their souls together. Midnight chimed, a sound unheard but deeply felt throughout the territory. The time for the bond was now. A sharp, painful jolt of cold replaced the warmth she'd felt. Instead of the gentle, possessive nudge of a mate, Kar's lips drew back in a silent, chilling snarl. His amber eyes, moments ago filled with potent assessment, hardened into glacial rejection. He didn't just hesitate, he recoiled. With a soundless, terrifying pivot, the pure white Alpha King turned his massive body away from the delicate woman in cream silk. He did not look back. He did not offer explanation. He simply stalked toward the shadows, disappearing instantly into the depths of the trees he had emerged from. The silence that followed was not sacred. It was deafening, crushing. Elin stood frozen, her hand suspended in the air where she had intended to offer comfort. The physical pain of the sudden severance, the expected rush of the bond being violently ripped away, was crippling. It was more than rejection, it was the tearing of destiny. Humiliation, thick and suffocating, washed over her. She was rejected by the moon's chosen, by the king of the territory in the most primal way possible. A sob caught in her throat. She couldn't face the pity or the curiosity of the few witnesses nearby. Her dignity was shattered. She gathered the flowing skirt of her dress and fled, not toward the waiting village, but in the opposite direction toward the deepest, darkest pockets of the golden wood. She finally stumbled into a small, desolate hollow thick with ancient blackened moss. The filtering moonlight was now weak, unable to penetrate the thick, sorrowful boughs above. The soft, diffused light of the ceremony was replaced by oppressive shadow. She sank onto the cold earth, pulling her knees to her chest. The mystical atmosphere of the evening had vanished, replaced by the stark, unforgiving reality of the forest at night. He rejected me. The simple cruelty of the thought echoed in the silent woods. Her destiny, which had felt so clear, so defined, was now a gaping black hole. An alpha king's rejection meant more than just a broken heart. It meant she was flawed, unsuited to the power, unworthy of the throne. Tears streamed down her face, cooling instantly on her skin in the chill night air. She touched the braid near her crown, the careful, hopeful styling now mussed and damp. She remembered the fierce, protective heat that should have enveloped her when Carr looked at her. Instead, she had felt absolute zero, a void. "Why?" she whispered, the sound swallowed by the vast, uncaring wood. A strange, aching emptiness settled in her core. When a true mate bond connects, it fuses the souls, bringing immediate, searing warmth and recognition. Elin felt none of it. She felt physically empty, as if a vital piece of her own essence had been pulled out and stomped into the ground. She sat for hours, shivering despite the depth of the woods. The dark forest, usually a place of comfort and ancient wisdom, now felt hostile. Every snap of a twig sounded like Carr returning to confirm his rejection. She began to internally dissect the moment. His amber eyes had held a terrifying intensity, not of lust or love, but of struggle. Had he seen something in her that repelled him? Was she too soft, too human, for the raw power of the alpha? The hours dragged by. The air grew coldest just before dawn. Aelin was exhausted, mentally and physically drained. She thought about trying to return to the village, but the shame was a heavy cloak she couldn't shed. She decided she would wait until the sun rose high, then flee the territory entirely. She couldn't live here, a footnote in history, the woman the White King turned away from. Deep within the secluded den, far from the clearing, Carr shifted back into his human form. Sweat slicked his powerful frame, and his chest heaved with agonizing, ragged breaths. His rejection of Elin had been the hardest, most necessary act of his life. He hadn't turned away because she was unworthy. He had turned away because she was too worthy. Carr harbored a dark secret, a residual curse left by a rival pack leader years ago, a taint of unpredictable, searing rage that occasionally surfaced in his wolf form. He was terrified that his power, unchecked in the initial euphoria of the bond, would overwhelm her small, luminous spirit. He had seen the destiny in her eyes, the gentle strength in her braid, the utter perfection of her being, and knew he would shatter her if he failed to control his inner beast. He had promised himself he would remain mateless until he found a cure, or until the curse consumed him. He chose loneliness over destruction, but the moment he walked away, the universe had delivered a brutal correction. The bond, realizing that its true counterparts were willfully separated, began to tear itself apart, causing a catastrophic internal collapse in Carr. He was in agony, a pain far worse than any physical injury. His soul felt taut, stretched, and snapping. The rejection had not saved him, it had doomed him. His alpha power relied on the stability of a true mate. Without her anchoring presence, the darkness he feared was surging uncontrolled. Ellen, her name unspoken, was a searing brand on his mind. He realized the awful truth. His fear had not protected her. His rejection had endangered her, leaving her adrift and unprotected by his power. Worse, the primal need for her was now a storm attempting to rip his body in two. The king's heart knew no law but the mate's law. He clenched his fists, scraping his strong nails against the earth. He needed her touch, her scent, her confirmation to stabilize the rapidly deteriorating control over his wolf. He needed to mend the tear he had foolishly created. Carr stood, the dawn light beginning to paint the eastern sky in soft, pale orange hues. The pain was unbearable, manifesting as a deep, resonating hum in his bones that threatened to force a dangerous, uncontrolled shift. He could smell her despair, faint, mingling with the moss and the fear. She was close, but retreating. He had to move. Now. He allowed the shift. It was not the controlled, fluid transformation of the night before, but a violent, tearing eruption of fur and bone. The magnificent white wolf burst forth, panting, desperate. His amber eyes were no longer merely alert. They were wide with panic and fierce determination. He pushed off through the undergrowth, his powerful legs driving him forward, following the fragile ribbon of Elend's scent. The sky was lightening rapidly. The soft, diffused glow was returning to the canopy, signaling the beautiful moment of sunrise, the time of correction, of confession, of eternal claim. Elend was slumped against the trunk of an old maple, watching the first rays of sunlight filter through the high branches. This golden glow, usually so comforting, now seemed mocking, a reminder of the bright future she no longer had. She lifted her weary gaze. The forest was stirring, but the shadows were still long. Then she heard it, not the silent, gliding approach of the Alpha King from the night before, but a crashing, frantic sound. Something huge was tearing through the brush toward her. Fear, fresh and cold, gripped her. She tried to rise, but her muscles were stiff and exhausted. Carr burst into the small hollow. He was still the magnificent creature of pure white, but the composure was gone. His flanks were heaving, and his eyes, those intense amber pools, were wild with something that looked suspiciously like desperation, not disdain. He stopped, skidding to a halt mere feet from her. He looked at her tattered dress, her tear-stained face, and the overwhelming scent of her sorrow hit him like a physical blow. He whined, a low, guttural sound of pure anguish that vibrated in the air. Elend stared, paralyzed. This was not the arrogant rejection she had witnessed hours earlier. This was a creature in profound distress. Carr took a tentative step toward her, then another. Elend didn't shrink away this time. The raw, desperate energy emanating from him overwhelmed her own shame. He lowered his massive head slowly, carefully, until the pure white fur brushed the cream silk of her knee. He allowed her scent, sweet, clean, and carrying the pain of rejection, to fill his lungs. He nudged her gently, a soft plea. Then he did what he should have done at midnight. With infinite care, he opened his jaws and closed them softly over the skin of her forearm, just above her elbow. It was not a bite of aggression, but a feather-light pressure, a claiming that was both primal and deeply tender. As his teeth met her skin, the agonizing void Elin had felt for hours instantly reversed. A tidal wave of white-hot energy slammed into her, starting at the point of contact and flooding her veins. It was the bond correcting itself, fusing with a power that was now doubly intense due to the hours of separation. Warmth, safety, and an overwhelming sense of belonging flooded her soul, chased away the cold and the fear. She gasped, her body arching slightly into the contact as the Alpha's essence claimed her as his own, stabilizing her core. Carr lifted his head, releasing her arm. He looked into her eyes, pleading for forgiveness, pouring all his agony and love into the amber gaze. Elin's hand instinctively reached out, trembling, and buried itself in the thick, luxurious fur around his neck. The fur was softer than she had imagined, radiating scorching heat. The sheer power of the creature felt safe now, anchored to her. She traced the strong line of his shoulder, the contact sending delicious shivers through her. The connection was undeniable, breathtaking. In that moment she understood. The previous rejection had been an act of fearful love, not hatred. Suddenly, Carr threw his great head back, lifting his muzzle toward the rising sun. The golden light, now streaming brilliantly through the trees, hit his white fur, illuminating him like a mythological deity. He opened his throat and released a sound that was not just a communication, but a declaration that shook the very foundation of the golden wood. It was the howl of the Alpha King, but it was raw, primal, and utterly desperate. It was a sound of sorrow, regret, and ultimate possession. It was not the silent snarl of rejection, but the booming affirmation of eternal claim. He howled her name, Elaine. The sound echoed off the hills, carrying across the entire territory. Every creature, every member of the clan heard the clear, resonant call. It was a correction, a promise, and a warning to any who might think their queen was vulnerable. The bond was sealed, and the king was in despair over his mistake. When the howl faded, Carr lowered his head again, pressing his massive, powerful body against her small frame. He nudged her until she was enveloped in the warmth of his fur, folding his body around her like a protective shield. Elin felt the steady, pounding rhythm of his powerful heart against her thigh. She buried her face in his neck, inhaling the intoxicating scent of snow and mate. "You foolish king," she murmured, tears of relief now mixing with the dew on his fur. Carr shifted slightly, his muzzle resting on her cheek, his breath warm against her ear. She felt the gentle lick of his tongue, a profound gesture of apology. The sun climbed higher, bathing the scene in a tranquil golden light. Elin was no longer cold, no longer ashamed. She was enveloped in heat and power. Carr maintained the protective embrace, ensuring every centimeter of her body absorbed his scent and his presence. The physical proximity was overwhelming, a deep, sensual confirmation of their link. She felt his profound need, not just for a queen to stand beside him, but for her specific, luminous soul to anchor his tumultuous existence. As the mystical golden light filtered down, creating a halo around the pair, Elin felt the gentle eroticism of the bond beginning to assert itself, a slow, delicious heat curling in her belly, answering the primal, desperate thrumming of the king pressed against her. She gently scratched behind his ear, and Carr let out a low, rumbling purr, a sound of immense contentment. No words were needed. The howl had spoken volumes. The rejection at midnight was a terrible, painful mistake, but by sunrise the Alpha King had found his queen, and he would never let her go again. Elin leaned into the pure white fur, feeling the strength of the territory settling into her bones. She was claimed, adored, and finally home.